So, I have a lot of opportunity to teach various students. And, the great thing about being a teacher is that you end up learning more from your students than you end up teaching them. So they always kind of drag you into places you need to go. And, I had a student the other day who asked me about prayer. And he basically said, why should we bother praying? How should we bother praying? And what's the whole deal about? I mean, what's this? What's it about anyway? I'm not sure I really believe in the process of prayer. And, that really was a great question because it made me think about prayer in a deeper way than I usually think about it. And it also allowed me to visit one of my teachers who's had some wonderful things to say about prayer. I'll share a few quotes of his with you tonight. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. So, it's not unusual for me to hear in some very big synagogues who don't have the energy, I think, that Cantor Andy creates for us, that people went to services, they really didn't get anything out of it. And the only moment they felt that it was good to be at services was at the oneg or the kiddush, because at least at that point in the service, they were connecting with friends and they felt like they belonged and it felt good. But during the whole process of the service, they were waiting for the moment where they could connect with others in the oneg or the kiddush. And I always wondered what this is about. How could people come to communal prayer and not get anything out of it? What's going on? And one of the first stopping places most rabbis go to when you talk to them about that, and they say, well, people aren't interested in prayers. That's they don't bring anything with them to the services. They expect to be given something, but they're not open to receive it. And here's what Rabbi Heschel said about this. Prayer will not come about by default. It requires education, training, reflection, contemplation. It's not enough to join others. It's necessary, I love this part, it's necessary to build a sanctuary within, brick by brick, instants of meditation and moments of devotion. And what I think Heschel is saying, you can't magically expect to go to services, and even if the music and the cantor is talented, something magical will happen if you're just sitting back and listening. You have to be willing to build that inner sanctuary while you're engaging in the process of prayer, so that the holiness of the words and the sacredness of the moment means something to you. As a spiritual leader, I have to take responsibility for part of this. I help you lift the bricks, and Cantor Andy does too. Lift the bricks to create this sanctuary. And I do this by trying to provide words which help you understand the meanings of the prayer, and by myself being actively involved in the prayers and modeling what it means to be actively involved with the prayers. And before I lead services, I invariably look at the prayers and think about how they speak to the 21st century mind. These prayers are ancient. They were written long ago. And if one doesn't try and look at the modern meanings of the prayers, it's like a skeleton with no meat on it. The prayers are like a skeleton with no meat on it. Many congregants have also said that praying in Hebrew creates an impenetrable barrier. And they just can't engage in the process of prayer because they don't read Hebrew and they don't understand Hebrew. And I once had a student who told me, and actually was very involved in Jewish life, but he never went to services because he didn't know Hebrew, he didn't know what was going on, and he had no interest in going. So I was really, rabbis always have workarounds, What was I going to tell this person who didn't want to go? So I said, I think there may be a way you can get something out of prayer, even if you don't know prayer services, even if you don't know Hebrew. What you can do is when you get there, just engage in the choreography of the prayer service. By that, I mean the moments of sitting, the moments of standing, which we did during the Baruch Hu, and the moments of bowing, which we also did during the Baruch Hu. That there's a choreography that kind of you can engage with. And he said, what are you talking about? a choreography. What does that mean? I said, well, it's like this. When everybody's sitting all around you and the Hebrew's going on, don't try and keep up with it. Just sit there and think about what you're grateful for. Think about what it is that you're thankful for in your life. And, some of our lives are better and some of our lives are worse, but I think if you really think about it, everybody can always find one thing to be grateful for. I know me, I'm grateful to wake up in the morning, I wake up, it's a good day, it's a good day. And I think that's why the first prayer in the liturgy, the morning liturgy, is Modeh Ani, which is a prayer of thanks, because we're thankful we finally woke up. I think we woke up. There's nothing magical about the prayer, the Hebrew words. You can engage in this process of gratitude while you're sitting there. You don't have to engage in the Hebrew. And, I was reading the New York Times, the LA Times this week, and actually they were quoting this research study which showed women, I don't know why it was just women, but women who had an attitude of gratitude, it's kind of an interesting phrase, they lived longer than their women colleagues who were disillusioned and discouraged all their lives. That somehow having this sense of gratitude was life-affirming and life-prolonging. So it's not just this moment of sitting. There are other parts of the choreography of prayer. There's also when we stand, that's a big moment in prayer. So I said, there's this thing about standing in prayer. He said, what do you mean there's a thing about standing in prayer? I said, well, when you stand up in prayer, you know that you're joined in community. Everybody's standing all around you. You become part of something that's bigger than you are. And if you just think about it, when you're standing at this moment in the liturgy, people in synagogues all over Los Angeles are standing at the same moment in the liturgy. And if you want to widen your field of vision, you can say, not only are they standing right now, but historically, for centuries, people stood at this very, very moment. And I'd like to think that in the future, people will be standing too. So when you're standing, you're connected to something that's enduring and eternal. You're standing with something that's really big. Our lives are meant to be shared with others. We're not meant to be isolated. And these moments of communal standing and sharing are very, very important. I think one of the big social issues of our time is that people don't feel connected to each other. In the old days, families lived together in the same neighborhoods and everybody was connected. My mother lived all around her cousins and her siblings. But our generation, we went to college, we moved away, and we stayed away. And that created this culture of disconnection to our roots. And this moment when we stand in synagogue is a way to get back to that moment of connection to our roots. We're not alone. We're part of something, and we're part of something that exists right now and that has endured for centuries and hopefully will endure into the future. Now, there's one final piece of choreography of prayer that I think is probably the most important, and that's the moment when we bow during prayer. We bow during the Baruch Hu. And I think that's really important because it's really teaches us something really important about humility. We all have moments of achievement, and we have moments when we've missed the mark. We all have times where things have gone great and times where things just didn't work out. That's the nature of our lives. And bowing is our way to embrace both our strengths and our limitations. And that's why it's placed strategically in the liturgy at very important moments, like at Baruch Hu was a very important moment. It's like a call to community where finally everybody's together on the same page. So there's something very, very powerful about the bowing. It's not as if the Hebrew words, and if you need to, and you want to use the transliterations, it's not that they're not beautiful, but they're tools. They're tools that are supposed to take you someplace. They're not the treasure. They're just the tools to open the treasure chest. So if they're useful tools and you want to use them to open the treasure chest, use them. But if they're not useful tools, find other tools to make prayer services meaningful. And I've just given you this choreography of prayer tool. There might be something else. So I've spoken a bit about how to pray, but I think I want to end by talking about why to pray. That's a whole different question. I'd really like to think that when I pray, I can expect that my prayers will be answered. I mean, that would be ideal, right? I pray for something and it happens. But that's really a tough take. That's a tough take. I don't think it's good for me or for us to always pray with the expectation our prayers will be answered. I think the one thing we can hope for is that when we leave the time of prayer, we're changed in some way. It doesn't have to be an earth-shattering change. It can be a subtle change. Sometimes I leave and I feel relaxed after services, either attending or leading. Sometimes I feel a sense of connection to others, like I've really bonded with this Beth community by leading services and being with you. And it's a wonderful feeling of being connected to such beautiful people. And sometimes I leave with a sense of being whole, a sense of something better about myself. Prayer does not have to change the world. Prayer does not have to change the world. It's enough if prayer just changes us in some small way. Many of us are familiar with Rabbi Heschel and know that he was very involved in social action in the civil rights movement. And in speaking about prayer, he said one of the most inspiring reflections that I've ever heard, and I want to share this with you tonight. Actually, in one of the teachings I needed to take, which taught me how to be a prayer leader, it was up on this big board. So every time we were engaging and learning how to lead prayers, we had to read this. And this is what he says. Prayer is meaningless unless it's subversive, unless it seeks to overthrow and to ruin the pyramids of callousness, hatred, opportunism, and falsehood. The liturgical movement must become a revolutionary movement, seeking to overthrow the forces that continue to destroy the promise, the hope, and the vision. So I'm going to just say it one more time. Prayer is meaningless unless it's subversive, unless it seeks to overthrow and to ruin the pyramids of callousness, hatred, opportunism, and falsehoods. The liturgical movement must become a revolutionary movement, seeking to overthrow the forces that continue to destroy the promise, the hope, and the vision. And there are plenty of those forces in the world right now. For me, the pyramids of callousness, hatred, and opportunism are all the xenophobia and fear of others that has infected our political discourse. And each of us can be infected by this terrible virus of hatred and fear that's dominating the politics in our world. We can use this moment of prayer to feel closer to our Jewish community and to envision bringing that same energy, that same feeling of connection to all the others we meet and interact with. If you follow the flow of the liturgy, you'll see that we start with gratitude for creation and then with a vision of oneness expressed at the very end of the prayer, Aleinu. It's a oneness that speaks to the connection of the whole world, bringing the whole world together. So that's where the prayer service is really taking us, to this place where we can envision the whole world being connected and at peace. That's the promise. That's the hope and the vision, I think, that Rabbi Heschel was talking about. This is where the prayers of the tools of the prayer service are most important. The music, the words, the choreography are all designed to take us to this place of oneness. They're designed to bring us to a place where we embrace our role in making the world a better place, where we all can bring compassion, justice, and wisdom into the world. Sometimes we do this in big ways, like contributing to charity that support the fallen, or voting and supporting leaders who bring us together and don't divide us. And sometimes we make the world better, even in the smallest ways, by just smiling at a stranger we pass on the street. Heschel says this beautifully: prayer is meaningless unless it's subversive. May we all become agents of change. May our prayers inspire us to try and make the world a better place this week. Shabbat Shalom.